From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. When it's time to get a good night's rest, women have it harder than men. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, women are more likely than men to have trouble falling and staying asleep. But the treatments that doctors prescribe for sleep disorders, like medication or different bedtime routines, may be based more on data about male sleep patterns than female sleep patterns. That's a key takeaway from a new study out of the University of Colorado. The findings could eventually lead doctors to rethink how they treat sleep problems, especially in women. Rachel Rowe is assistant professor of integrative physiology, and she worked on the study. She joined me to explain her research and how sleep medicine as we know it may be shortchanging women who experience sleep problems. One of the things your study set out to do was to look seriously at the question of whether women get less sleep than men. You did that by studying sleep habits of male mice and female mice. Before we dig into the results, though, I feel like my husband has slept better than me for forever. And I talk with female friends about this all the time. Why did we need a study to prove this?
I think that one thing that's really interesting about sleep to me is that previously looking at sleep in females is that if there was a complaint of sleep, there was a sociocultural bias where sleep problems were misattributed to psychosocial issues. So women were having stress, and that's why their sleep was poor. Not that maybe biologically their sleep was different.
So you and your team looked at mice in the lab and found that, yes, females do indeed experience more sleep disruptions than males. And that's partly due to their reproductive cycle, and this happens in a lot of species, including humans. What are some of your theories about why females experience more sleep disruptions?
Yeah, so our study was in mice, but if we think about humans and really across species, one of my hypotheses that I have about women is they're more easy to wake up. And so while our mice had less sleep, some of that's that they're maybe more easy to arouse. And I think that if you think about women as being the caretakers or being mothers or what their role might be in their household, they need to be able to be aroused. So if they're taking care of children, for instance, I have 2 little children, and so I give the example that I hear footprints on the carpet, and it wakes me up. I hear them moving from their bedroom down the hallway, and it wakes me up. And my husband would never wake up. And I think that from an evolutionary standpoint, that's to protect the species. And so if women in other types of species, if you think about black bears, they have cubs, and after they reproduce, the cubs stay with the mom for the first year of their life.
Right.
The mother has to be able to be aroused easily to protect them in cases where there might be a predator or some kind of threat. And so I think that maybe it's actually our superpower.
Okay. All right. So next time I'm struggling with insomnia, I'm just going to remember, okay, it's an evolutionary superpower here. And
Exactly.
one thing your team realized was that other sleep researchers typically reduce the percentage of female mice in their studies. You might expect half of the mice, 50% of the mice in a study would be female, but many researchers use far less than 50%. Why would researchers take that step?
Yeah, so probably 10 years ago, there were no female rodents in studies. And so the fact that there are any female rodents is actually an improvement and a step forward in the right direction.
Wow.
So traditionally in research, there's this need to focus on limiting variability in studies. So you want to have a single thing, a variable that you're changing. That way you can tell what's causing the result. And females are considered a little too complicated. As they're transitioning quickly through their hormonal phases, these hormones can change some of the other types of underlying metabolic or hormonal profiles. And so I think from a research standpoint, it was too complicated to put females in because whatever your result was, you had to then determine, well, was it the hormones? Was there something different with the hormones? And then I think we really, as a research society, started to think about the fact that wouldn't that be important to know if the hormones are changing some of these outcomes? Because females, if we think about women, humans, they are going to have these hormones. And I think that that's really helped move the field to include these female rodents.
When researchers use more male mice in a study than female mice, what does that do to their findings?
So this is a great question. Say there's a drug that only improves sleep in women. Mm-hmm. If we give it to a population of rodents that isn't equally balanced, so we've got more males, so say we've got 75% males and only 25% females, mm-hmm. and we give this experimental drug, it looks like it doesn't work because there's not enough females in the population being represented. And so when you run the statistical analysis, it looks like it doesn't work. And so maybe that drug doesn't make it to clinical trials, or the drug company decides, oh, that's a failure, we'll move on to the next drug. When in reality, if the females had been fully represented, or if they were analyzed separately, just the female data instead of being combined with the male data, there might have been a really strong response of that drug in, say, curing, insomnia, for instance. And so I think one of the issues is if you don't have a good balanced study design, you might miss an effect that's there if it's a female specific response.
Right. I mean, you could miss something really important, it sounds like. I want to zoom out a bit. How concerned are you about how females are underrepresented in sleep research?
So I definitely think that there's a move in the field to do a better job. But I still think that if, as a biomedical field, we want to do personalized medicine, we have to continue to represent females in clinical studies, because the idea of personalized medicine is that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. For sleep concerns, or really for any kind of disease or treatment, to have a personalized medical approach, you have to do it in women as well. You can't do it in men and then say, this will be personalized and it will be something that we can adapt to females. You have to study the females to see what would be their personalized medical approach to these disorders, especially in the context of sleep.
I mean, should women be concerned about their poor sleep, like kind of given everything that we've just talked about?
One thing with sleep is that there's enough data to suggest that maybe women are just more likely to be aroused, in which case we talked about this being your superpower and maybe it's a normal thing.
Right.
And so I think a better thing would be not having stress around your sleep. Know what your sleep looks like from a really personalized standpoint, and then notice if your sleep changes. So as a woman, if you know that you usually wake up 5 times a night, well, that might not be as good as your male counterpart. That might be your normal sleep pattern. If you start to notice now you're waking up 15 times a night, the change in your sleep pattern would be a better thing to indicate, oh, maybe there's something going on. Maybe I have some underlying inflammation in my body, or, that maybe I'm starting to get sick. And changes in your own sleep may be a better indicator of overall what your sleep health profile looks like. And so I kind of encourage people to do that, especially women.
Rachel Rowe studies the physiology of sleep at the University of Colorado. She mentioned that on a larger level, her study is a reminder that it's important to advocate for yourself when you visit your doctor, and to make sure your treatment plan is tailored to your gender, your medical conditions, and your personal needs. That's it for us today on In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thank you for listening.